Alright, this board is mostly done. I need to replace these 4 resistors, and I still need to find a couple of those Zener diodes, those 3.6 volt ones. But once I do that, everything else is done, and this is ready to go back in and be tested. Now in the meantime, we still have to deal with those replacement STK modules. And if you remember, the ones that they were using were those STK0080s, and they're really under-designed for the demand that they're going to be put under in this amplifier. Really the correct part would have been the STK0105, which is very hard to find. Again, there's probably counterfeits out there as well. I don't want to get into that. So what I'm going to do is, I talked about a couple of options. The first one was that I was thinking of was Pyramid Audio. Now that's the company I used to replace the STK modules in that Kenwood that I just did a video series on a couple videos ago. It's the, what was it, the Kenwood KA9100. And I have to admit, those Pyramid Audio modules, that's the first time I ever used them, they worked out fantastic. The only problem is those transistors are kind of hard to get, if not really hard to get now, because Sanken is no longer making them. I think the owner probably must have purchased a good supply of them, because they're still listed on eBay and on their website as for sale. But I know sometimes if you order them there, it can take a little while to get them if they have to make them to order. And my bigger issue is if the transistors fail, you're really not going to have much of an option to replace them, because they're those Sanken transistors that they're using, those Darlingtons, they're almost like little modules with diodes in them and everything. They're just getting really hard to find. So I opted to go with a previous project that I went with on the SX780 video that I did, and this was a contribution made by an Audio Karma member, and I want to give him some credit. You can see his handle there is RCS16, and the first sentence or so, a couple sentences, tell it all. You know, I decided instead of sending these files to individuals or trying to make a buck from folks needing them, I thought that it would be better served if I made a contribution to the community. Isn't that wonderful? When people do that, it's pretty awesome. I mean, it's the reason that this hobby can continue, and we can continue to work on some of this vintage equipment and keep it going over the years. So totally hats off to RCS16. He posted a link to the Gerbers. If you go to this thread, you can download the Gerber files, and you can order this. I think it's even posted on PCBWay. He even, the bill of materials list, he entered into Mauser, I think, either Mauser or DigiKey, if you scroll down on this. And he has a shopping cart saved and a link to that. So all you have to do is link to that shopping cart at Mauser's, purchase it, go to PCBWay and download, place an order for this particular board, and you can get those boards. Now, I did something a little bit different. I changed it a little tiny bit, and I uploaded mine to Gerber files, these Gerbers, up to JLC PCB, just because I have an account there. I'm familiar with their process and everything. And I ordered, well, this was a while back, but I ordered 10 boards. Let's see. This was in 2021 was the last batch I ordered. And this was originally posted in 2016, so this has been around for a while. And I think what we're going to do, I got the black boards with the gold plating on it. Just thought it looked kind of neat. And what we're going to do is we're going to build a set of these and make a set of backer plates similar to the one that's online. Now, I don't know if it's this person or if it's someone else on eBay, but there is an eBay dealer who is selling these as kits. I actually ordered the kit the last time for that SX780 video and assembled them, and they worked perfectly. And the kit comes with the board, the pre-drilled heat sink plates, heat spreader plates, and everything to make it mount directly in place of the old STK modules. And you order the parts and you build them and so forth, and it worked out really well. This time I'm going to kind of do everything manually. I ordered these boards. They've been sitting. I really haven't needed them until now, since 2021, so this is the first project I'm going to do with them. And I'm going to make myself a set of plates. I have some 1/4-inch thick aluminum stock that's really flat, high quality aluminum down in my shop. I'm going to put the metal cutting blade on my bandsaw and see if I can cut a set of those out and drill them, and let's see if we can make these. Okay, let's start out with the diodes and the resistors. I like to start with the flat components first, and then we'll go to the taller components second. And we're going to need 4, what are they, what are they, 202s? RL202s. And these are just kind of a standard 100 volt 2 amp diode. And I'm just going to use what was recommended on the thread on Audio Karma. And we're just going to go ahead and bend these leads here. So this is kind of a lot of fun here. I like working on this kind of stuff. And you'll have to forgive the noisy fan noises, because I got the air conditioning going in the house. It is really hot out. We are in the middle of that heat wave, and I'm out in Pennsylvania, so we're getting some hot weather, but boy, I looked at the weather for Phoenix, Arizona. I feel bad for those folks out there. This whole week, every day is going to be, the coldest day will be 109 degrees Fahrenheit. The hottest day is going to be 121 degrees Fahrenheit, if you can believe that. And at nighttime, the temperature is not dropping any lower than 90 degrees Fahrenheit. That is, wow. That's some high temperature. So hopefully those folks can stay cool and the power grid can handle it. Wow. So anyhow, we got air conditioning going here, and that's why you're going to hear the fans going. Hopefully it's not too annoying. And like I said, we're just going to do a solder and chat. Certainly feel free to skip through this part, because all I'm going to do is put the components in here and talk about whatever comes to my mind when we do this. And I'm just going to build both modules at once. And I'll get this started. The blower kicked off. That's good. And we're not going to get fancy. I'm not going to use my PC board holder or anything like that. I do like the way that JLC did these boards. Like I said, I had them do the black solder mask with the gold, and I forget the nomenclature they use for the gold plating on everything, but I think this is going to be a pretty nice looking board. It should be very durable, should hold up for a long time. That's what I'm hoping for anyway, because apparently the person that owns this Fisher stereo really likes it. I guess he had it from day one and really wants it to work again. And he took it to a local repair shop, and they looked at all those burned boards and things. I don't think they really looked at it very closely, because he just basically said it's too far gone, he can't repair it. And actually, as you saw, once we cleaned it off, of course, I couldn't get all of the skid marks off of the diaper there, but well, pretty clean. But if he'd have looked at the back of the board, there's really no damage to it. So I don't know. This was a very repairable thing, if you ask me. And I should turn on my desolder my solder fume extractor so the smoke doesn't go everywhere, but you'd never be able to hear me over that thing. It's pretty loud. It'd be like being at an airport listening to the jet engine. So, okay. One of my patrons emailed me and asked me a very interesting question. He said that I talk about my cousin a lot, and would it be possible for me to maybe do an interview or to introduce him on the channel? And I may do that. I will be going over to see him here sometime in the near future. And maybe I'll turn the camera on a little bit and we'll have a little impromptu, but he is definitely one of the people I really look up to in my life, and he is responsible for, a lot of what I do. He got me started in electronics. Actually, I have two cousins. Our family we have three generations, all three different ages. I'm the youngest age, and my cousin out there that I talk about all the time, he's 86 years young and sharp as a tack. That's all I can say. And it might be fun. Maybe I'll introduce him sometime if he's okay with it. We'll have to see. Okay, R1 and R5 are 4.7 ohm resistors. So we'll get those put in. Let's see. But anyway, yes, my cousin is... I kind of grew up when, when school would let out for the summer. I'd go over to his house and I'd stay there with him and drive his wife insane, between him and his son, who was close to my age. So we were really close too, and we still are. And we would have a lot of fun. And, my cousin, one of his main day job, he had a couple jobs, but his main day job was working on for a vending machine company. And he worked on, jukeboxes, pinball machines, video games, all kinds of really cool stuff. And of course, the most fun in the world was we would get to go out at after hours, because he'd be on call, and we'd have to go out on calls, in the bars and in the pubs and things. And then when work let out at 10 o'clock at night, we would have to take the service vehicle back to the shop and pick up his car. And we would always go and go there late at night, and then we'd play all the video games and blast all the jukeboxes that were in there for repair or for distribution or whatever. And what fun it was, And I learned so much working with him. And then his secondary job was at home. He had a full-blown TV and radio shop. Pretty nice shop too. And during the day, when he'd be at work, his son and I would be down there in the shop playing around with stuff and learning. He'd give us little projects to work on, little things to learn. And after doing that for a number of years, you kind of learn stuff. Now, I never took off with the television end of it, and never learned as much about the television part as maybe as I could have or should have, because I kind of went the direction, like I said, I got into this x-ray thing right out of high school, went to college and everything, and but I did really get into the audio, the jukeboxes and all the video games and stuff. I was really fascinated by that. And I still, learned the TV thing with him, but not to the degree, that maybe Shango out there or Bob Anderson, some of the folks there that have their own YouTube channels, they're into it. They know a lot more about that than I do. But that's kind of my own choice and my own fault. I like TVs. I like working on video stuff. And I actually kind of that helped me out, because when I got my first job in the x-ray industry, one of the things that was very desirable was people that knew about video, because a lot of the fluoro and cardiac catheterization laboratories and things like that, they used a lot of video technology, cameras, and then the image intensifiers, of course, monitors, digital storage, VCRs, all kinds of things. It's a lot different today because everything's digital flat panel, but back then, learning how to, if you knew how to work on a camera, like with a Vidicon pickup tube. Of course, Vidicons were the cheap fluoro rooms that you'd see in small hospitals, but some of the higher end units used Plomicon, Saticon, Exicon, Chalnicon. There was all kinds of different video tubes that has different targets and everything, and I really got pretty good at that. That was one of my wheelhouses early on in the industry, was working with that type of thing. And of course, I owe that all to my cousin, and working in the little TV shop with him. Good memories. What a lot of fun. But any of you folks out there that know stuff like that, don't be afraid to share it with the young people. They're worth it. They're worth it because they grow up and they're the ones that will pick up the ball and run with it one day. And, you young folks out there, don't be afraid to learn. I mean, there's so much out there you can learn and so much out there you can do. And, you can earn a good living for yourself. You can help a lot of people with the things that you get into. And you just never know where you can go with all this. So, my advice is get out there and do it. And for you old timers, all the graybeards, don't be afraid to share with others. If people weren't patient with me, people didn't answer my dumb questions and take the time, even at work, I had a couple of people that really took me under their wing. One of the cath lab specialists, he did all the cardiac cath labs at Cleveland Clinic and some of the big world famous places. He was right in there. He was very, very, just a brilliant individual. And they sent me out with him for for my training, and that was a lot of work working on those cath labs. They were $2 to $3 million for a cath lab back then, and they were very complex. A lot harder to work on than they are today. It took a long time to do things, and to have to stop and answer a question for somebody and share your knowledge with them. Technically that could be a threat. Taking my job away. Don't worry, no one's ever going to take those people's jobs away. They're so brilliant. But I would ask a question, and he would just patiently stop and what he was doing, and he would take his time and explain every little thing until I understood it. I was blessed. I had some very good people in my life, both family members and co-workers, who took me under their wing and showed me a lot of things. And again, when the internet thing started and YouTube, in its infancy, I didn't know what to think of it all at first. But when I saw people out there showing others how to do these sorts of things so that it can go on to other people, I knew I had to do something to give back, to put my part into it. And that's why I have this channel. When I say I don't do this for money and I don't really care about likes and subscribes and all that, I really mean that. I'm hoping if there's even a couple of you out there that get inspired by this and learn it, maybe you're not going to fix stereos like we do on this channel, but maybe it's going to lead you into something else in electronics. that you can earn a living at or do some good things for others with, wow, definitely, you want to definitely do that. It's worth it. It's definitely worth it for me to spend the time sitting down here and doing this. And that's why I do it. That's why I do it, because people took the time to do these things for me. So another thing is the Patreon thing, Why have Patreon if you don't care about money? Well, I learned early on after I started this channel that if you share some information online like this in these videos, people want to know more. And before you know it, the comments and the emails and everything just, they get too overwhelming for someone that's just doing this for fun, for a hobby. I just unfortunately can't answer everybody and everything, especially when you get swamped with emails and text messages and things from people who say that you're their long lost relative and they have $1 billion over in Indochina that they want to give to you, and give me your credit card and I can transfer you the money. And you get so much of that, and yeah, you can just ignore it, but it takes time to ignore it. Having to pull the weeds in the garden takes time, and sometimes you're better off if you can prevent the weeds from growing in the first place. Then you don't have quite as many to pull. So I figured if somebody's really serious enough to learn something and wants access to be able to email me, I want to be able to answer them. And so, that's the Patreon thing for me. I know that's a lot different model than most people have when they set up Patreon. And, I try to use any little bit of money I get from that. I don't have a whole lot of patrons, but for those I do, it helps, and that money goes back into this channel to pay for things like this, so I don't have to spend so much out of my own pocket. But again, it's, we're a community. We help one another out. This is a good thing. So again, this whole thing came about from the video, or from the email I got from a patron asking if I could introduce my cousin. I'll ask him and see what he says. What I can tell you is some of the stories he could tell you about, he's one of the cool ones. He got to grow up right at the, when the really crazy technology and electronics was coming out, in the 1940s and 50s and 60s. And he really got to see some cool things. And he had some people who, once again, took him under their wing, and showed him a lot. And he was quite the prodigy in his youth, to my understanding. So much so that back in the, in the 50s, I think it was, Bell Laboratories showed up on his doorstep trying to get him to come and work for them. And because he was just that good, with a lot of different things. And this is a person that never went to college for it, all self-taught, and taught by, being respectful to others who are very good at it and who shared with him, and by reading books. If you ever look at, what the heck's the name of the book? I'll have to look it up for you. Elements of Radio. That's the book. He read that book cover to cover and memorized it. And of course, I found a copy of that book. I didn't even know that book was so important to him, but I was at one of those used bookstores. I like to collect, old technical manuals like that, and I got that book very early on, and I was really amazed by it. And many, many years later, he we were talking about learning things, and he said, when I was a kid, there was this book called Elements of Radio, and I'll put up the author and everything. There's like 2 or 3 revisions of it. It was a big time thing in the 1930s and 40s. And he said that book just changed my whole outlook and career and everything. He says, I read that book cover to cover, and it really brought me way ahead with, learning radio and RF and things like that. And again, some of the stories he could tell were pretty interesting. Some of the things he built and things he did. And maybe I'll leave that up. If we talk, maybe I'll get him to tell you some of them himself if he's willing to have a chat with us. All right, let's put these potentiometers in here if we can. So long story short, and I'll repeat myself because repetition is how we learn, and that is, graybeards, don't be afraid to share. No one's going to steal your job or your secrets. And youngsters, there ain't a whole lot of graybeards out there. So when you get the opportunity to learn, be nice to them, ask questions, and learn. And, there's so much you can get involved in, And that's why it always kind of amazes me, all the good things that are out there to do, why anybody would want to go out there and do the bad things. Because, well, maybe nobody's willing to share with them anything. I don't know. Who knows? Again, it's not my position to be on this thing and talk about politics, religion, or capacitors. But hey, I think it's cool to tell people to be good and to do good in this world. Because if you don't, who will? All right. Check this out. Well, that's crooked as a dog's hind leg. Both of them. Look at that. Well, maybe actually I meant it to be that way. Having it curved up will be a little easier to get the tweaker on there. So I'll leave it. Yeah, that's what I intended. I meant it to be that way. Okay, R3 and R4. What are they? Let me see here. R3 and R4 are 4.7 ohms at 1 watt. I believe I have that. I do have a couple of those. All right, let me get those. Now again, when we compare this to the Pyramid audio unit, those modules, they do not have a potentiometer. They do not need to be adjusted. They are adjusted when they build them. They have those little current source integrated circuits, and they have those special transistors, those Sanken transistors that are Darlingtons, and they also have the bias spreader diodes all in one package. They look just like a regular TO3P transistor, but they're not. And it's a much simpler design than this, and wow, the performance of those ones on that Kenwood really kind of blew me away. But again, if those transistors go bad, that's my only fear. These ones, at least, if something goes wrong, you have an option. These transistors are standard transistors, although the NJW, what are they? NJW3280 ones, I believe, are wow, those things, they perform very well. They're a very high frequency, fast transistor, good slew rate, so they should be really good performers. Again, the voltage and current and wattage dissipation and everything of these is such that this will be able to work on a 100-watt amplifier without breaking much of a sweat. So I think we'll be okay with it, even though these are were originally made to go into a 50 watt amplifier. Can easily handle way more than that. So these are really cool modules. And like I said, the extra voltage and wattage and so forth won't be a problem for these. So you don't even have to change the design. And there are MJE transistors that you can also use, or MJ series, and they're also very high power, but their transition frequency, instead of 30 megahertz, is only like 3 megahertz, which is not a problem. You say, Tony, audio frequency is only 20 kilohertz. It's true, but when you start dealing with feedback and things like that, higher transition frequency does help, and that's why people are into that. And I know that people talk about transient intermodulation distortion, or TIM distortion, but even whether that's snake oil or not, it's still good to have a fast transistor, because when you have a lot of feedback and so forth, having transistors with high transition frequency means that they will have a very high slew rate, and it should help with all that. So it'll help with high frequency response even with feedback and so forth. All these things kind of do work in some ways. There's kernels of truth in everything. You hear the word audiophile, and some people totally cringe when they hear that word immediately. But there is, there's a balance to it, is what I'm saying. That there's some things that there is good, rational, scientific reason why something is worth doing or having or whatever, and other things are maybe not so much. They're a little more just kind of like, well, this is what I think, or what I've heard. And I'm not going to slight anybody. If you hear something that sounds good to you and you can afford it, go for it. I won't criticize you, because it's what you like. But I just don't like folks that insult one another just because they think they know everything, or they think somebody else doesn't know anything. That's not cool. Again, it goes back to that sharing with one another and learning thing. You can't learn from one another if you fight with one another all the time. And unfortunately, that gets in the way sometimes. And I think that can take somebody with who has the potential of being a really good engineer and kind of ruin their chances, because they, don't get along. Okay, let's put these 0.47s in here. Probably totally trashing the lens on my camera, but I guess we'll clean it with lens cleaner if we have to. And then what I'll do is I'll go over and touch up these solder joints after they're clipped off and everything, just to make them a little bit neater. And I forgot to put R2 in there. I don't even know what R2 is. Let's see what it says. R2 is... I can't find it. Oh well. Oh, it's 70 ohms. I got it. Okay, so it's a 70 ohm resistor. So I have to put those in too. I have to find them. I have some of those too. pop in there. And we'll just see how this goes. All right. These are relatively simple modules to assemble, as you can see. And again, you can download these from that thread that I showed you at the beginning here, and you can order the boards pre-made from JLC or from PCBWay, and they're not expensive at all. I think a pack of 10 of them, will probably cost you, $10 to $15 at the most for all of them. And then usually they charge you another $10 or $15 for shipping, just depending on, where you are and so forth. They use DHL typically. At least over here in the States, the most economical shipping is DHL, and I've never had any problems with them. And surprisingly, these boards show up in a relatively short period of time, considering that they make the boards to order. I'm surprised how fast they come in. So yeah, these are pretty cool. And I've been using JLC for a long time now, and I've always had pretty good luck with them. I'd like to be able to make boards here in the States, because there's a few places that offer that, but they're just so expensive I can't afford it. I mean, I think if I was doing it for work, something like that, where we had a little more money in the budget to do it, and you have an American company to come back on if you have any issues or need something reworked or something, then yeah, it makes sense. But for just a cheap hobby that you're doing, that's it. And I know a lot of people get really down on, somebody that's a different country or whatever. But I'll be honest, I mean, in my line of work, I meet a lot of people and work with a lot of people from around the world, and you know what? A lot of us, we have the same issues and we make the same complaints. Some people can't make those complaints as publicly as we do over here, but doesn't mean they don't think them. And there are a lot of good people out there, and don't let it fool you just because they don't live in the same place you do. They're still good people, and I really definitely admire some of the folks that I've worked with and learned from over the years. That's another thing this job has done for me, is I've learned so much from so many people, not just here in the States, but from other countries too. And I can't find, you know what, I think I put the wrong, these are 220 picofarads and I need 200. Well, I'll fix that. Okay, so I have the transistors here, and I need to get them mounted and properly spaced on the board. So the first thing we have to do is mount the transistors kind of ahead of time, so that we can kind of see how they line up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the board on here and then mark where we're going to bend the leads here. So I've kind of got this one started over here. Another feature that I did when I made these modules is, if you flip this over, instead of drilling and tapping the aluminum, I don't like driving an M3 really fine threaded stainless steel screw into an aluminum threaded, a threaded piece of aluminum, because those tend to strip out, especially if you get it cross-threaded, which is very easy to do. I mean, I understand about the turning it backward thing. Everybody says that. But honestly, if you put those screws in and out several times, those aluminum threads will come loose. So what I did was I countersunk these, okay? And there's a special counterbore tool that you can use to make these really nice looking holes. And if you do it right, you have to have a drill press, makes it really easy. You can see the heads of the screws are totally flush, which is really nice. And this is going to be the back part of the plate that's going to go against the heatsink. So I have this one kind of mocked up right now, and you can see how the transistors are all mounted. And I don't have any of the sill pads or anything yet. I don't need that yet. We're just going to mark this thing. So I kind of tried to get these as straight as possible, or at least close to it. And then this sits right on top of here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a real fine tip Sharpie pen like this, and I'm just going to kind of go under here and just roughly kind of mark where all of these are. Okay, so it gives me just a rough idea. Doesn't have to be perfect, but just kind of try to get it close. And you can see right here and right here. And then once I do that, I'll carry it over to here. I'm just eyeballing it. Again, it'll bend a little bit, but you want it to be close anyway, if you can. This will give us an idea of where this is going to need to be bent. Okay, just like so. And we'll do the middle one last, of course. You can see there's our bend points. So that's pretty much where we want these leads to come up. So we're going to bend just behind that a little bit. And you can use a really fine pair of tweezers, or if you have some really fine needle nose pliers, which I'm looking for right here. I like these because they work perfect for this. And all you do is we're just going to bend this up like so, bend this one up, and so forth. And then I'll take these off and finish them because it's kind of awkward doing it this way, but I'm just showing you where we need to be with all this. See, that one I'm going to have to form a little bit more, but they should go in. And when we're done, these should just go thread right through here. If I can get that lined up. And you can see I'll get those formed where they need to be. And then we'll be right back. Okay, change in plans. The backer plates are not going to work because they shim the module a little bit too far out over the circuit board. And I probably should have checked that before, but I kind of thought I would just be able to finagle it some way. But it really doesn't work well. And I thought about it and I said, well, why in the heck do I have to even deal with that? So what I ended up doing was this. I mounted the modules directly to the heat sinks. And I think it looks a lot neater. I think it looks a lot more like part of the system now. And it's just a better layout altogether. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount these in. I'm going to get the power amplifier board put back in. And I think we're going to be ready to test this thing out.